Welcome to Billionaire Business. My name's Ian Fishwicker. I'm a serial entrepreneur in the UK tech industry. I live a plural life these days, and over the last couple of years I've led a number of fundraisers and raised about 200 million. That's nothing compared to the guy you're about to meet.
Not me.
Not you. Oh, no, you. No.
I'm Chris Godsmark, and I've been advising for 2 decades on mergers, acquisitions, fundraisings, IPOs, the whole gamut really, and some businesses with a valuation of $1 billion or more.
16% of the equity was in the company. Everybody could be a shareholder. So we could stand up on stage and say, you are all shareholders or you all can be shareholders.
That was the biggest single fundraise by a UK private equity company ever at that point.
Yeah, a tech company, yes.
A tech company, yeah.
I had the badge for about a month and then delivery took it.
This is one of our what we call real deal interviews. This is a guy who's taken a business from very small to a valuation that was well over $1 billion. This is one of Scotland's greatest ever tech stories. It's the story of the flights app Skyscanner. Shane, lovely to see you. I was going to say former CFO, but you've done that many jobs. I think that's a bit too narrow, I think.
That's very kind. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. No, delighted to be here.
Shane, I mean, it's an incredible story, but just to take you back, Skyscanner, in literally the space of 10 years or 11 years, goes from a startup to a trade exit, I think, at a valuation of $1.75 billion. And you arrive as the business is really scaling up, and you take it through several fundraisings, you take it through the exit. Just take us through the point at which you arrive at Skyscanner, what you thought of the business at the time, whether you could see that potential, and what you were doing before that.
Okay, sure. Well, look, thanks for having me. I first thing I should say is this wasn't me. This was a team effort taking it through, which I had a part to play, but many others did too as well. And we were very lucky. It was a hell of a journey. It was definitely not expected, if I'm being honest, from when I first joined. I joined, it was 50 to 60 people. It was growing and the metrics were starting to look quite good, and it was profitable, which was great. It had taken a small amount of money a few years earlier from Scottish Equity Partners, who then became SEP or SEP.
Who became quite a big shareholder for probably not that much original investment when the company was very small, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They came in at the right time. But I'm aware it's also very easy to make it sound like, gosh, they were lucky. And they were an incredible support to that business, and actually incredible support to the exec team and the strategy and how we went. So it was more than luck. They had a key role to play. And I think that's the story that will come through mostly today. Was there was luck about who joined when and how everything gelled.
So just take us through that,
But it wasn't
bit,
chance.
because my understanding was you joined at the point where 2 out of the 3 founders stood down. Is that right?
So I joined at the start of 2012. There was sort of 70 plus people. There had been 3 founders. Gareth, who stayed on as CEO and had been CEO for some time and was kind of the original founder who was full-time, the first one to go full-time. And then you got Bon, who was heavily product focused, as was Gareth. And then you had Barry, who was commercial. And I joined at the start of 2012, having been engaging with the company probably for about 9 months. They'd originally come in looking for debt, and at that point it was a kind of equity play, and I still remember my response.
So you were a banker at that point?
And I was a banker with Barclays,
Right.
But I mentored tech companies right through, having run my own one 10 years earlier. So I was always obsessed with tech companies. I love tech. I'd written SEO in the good old days of black hat and white text, and so
you really understood what the product was. You must have done a lot of DD on the code and the product and that kind of thing.
Maybe not the code, but the product. Yes, I used it. I was a user. I didn't know they're based in Edinburgh until they came in to see us. So, but I would say I'm more of a product obsessive than a numbers obsessive.
Was that an unusual background? Because I've met loads of bankers in my life. Not many of them have been a tech startup and sold it and then became a banker. Did that make you a bit different?
It made me different. Yes. Yeah. Mate, I mean, I was somebody who in my 20s was splitting my day into 15-minute chunks to try and survive the startup, which, as a serial entrepreneur, you'll know, but that first gear problem where you have to really run hard at stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd had the panic attack type situation, all kinds of stuff when you run too hot for too long. And so I then thought I'd take a slightly gentler route of investment banking.
And so you start the role. Was the business at that point, would you class it as a business where you saw there was £1 billion company just waiting to be unlocked, or actually was it a little bit more early stage?
It was much more early stage. Right. What it was a CEO founder who was an exceptional visionary, and it was a product that could scale in terms of the market need was and the timing. So it nailed SEO, so it had a route to market that was brilliant. Would that have worked 5 years later? Maybe not, because it was much more congested in the space. And it had a product that was a proper superpower. So but what it didn't have was the tools to scale, and probably quite a lot of the rigor. And I think that's one of the areas that just sort of seemed to click quite quickly as Mark Logan joined the same day as me as COO, much more experienced than me, and particularly really strong on enabling people to be the best they can be and give agency. And that is really, really important.
I mean,
when
people
you're
forget
scaling.
that tech companies are really just a gang of people. That's all it really is.
Completely. It's people are everything. And it's why even if they don't report into they can't report into the COO, which makes complete sense because it's the ultimate enabler for your business is your chief people officer. But your chief people officer in a tech company should be on your board.
So it sounded like you put together 3 people who were quite different. The founder was strategy, the other guy is the operational bit. I'm guessing you're the numbers man.
Yeah,
and the focus.
I think now that at the time I didn't know, and I was being led by these 2 more experienced people than me for sure. But now, you look at the 3 fundamentals of a business. And leadership is all about how you integrate between strategy, people, and execution, right? And it's like, have we got the right strategy? And do people know it? The internal comms piece. Now, the strategy was there in Gareth's head. The challenge was extracting it and interpreting it into a way that people could understand. And Mark Logan was amazing at that. So we'd have
as the people were growing.
amount
Though,
of
I mean, you were hiring voraciously, weren't you?
Yeah,
So
5
not only
people
have
every
you
Monday.
got the existing base of employees to articulate the strategy to, you've got new people coming in almost on a daily basis, right?
Yeah. So you have to make it very simple, right?
Yeah.
And there's always a risk with founders that they think that they've articulated it. Now, why don't people get it? Well, because you had 20, you've now got 80. Therefore, only 20 of which 10 were listening. Actually know what we're doing. So
Give us a scale of the people. How many when you started and how many like 3 years later?
So we grew it from about 60, 70 odd when I joined. I can't remember. It was definitely less than 100 and more than 50 in that sort of bracket. And when I left at the end of 2019, we were about 1,800, I think.
Wow.
So we I say we. Gareth had the vision of where we're going. I'm not sure everyone understood it because actually often the case with great visionaries is it's the simplification of it that's almost because it is a complex vision. And I think we would spend, 2 hours as the 3 of us every Tuesday whiteboarding. It was just in their built-in routine. It was like extract from Gareth's head, try and add to it, debate, kick it around, extract again, go again, go again, go again. Led by Mark, who'd done it before, so he knew what he was doing.
Now, I'm going to ask a slightly risky question in the sense of I don't know what the answer is. Right. When I run tech businesses like that, give me a choice between good strategy and good execution. I go for execution every single time because the strategy is just a chat. Were you the execution obsessive?
Looking back on it, probably. I had come out of. I'd moved into a COO role, so with leverage finance, I moved into kind of COO role for Barclays, and it was all about volume and execution and spreadsheets and performance and not OKRs, but the equivalent of like objectives, how people are performing, numbers.
Yeah.
So definitely now when I look at those 3 things, I can see what worked well, and that you need to have at least one person who's scaled before. and Mark wouldn't have built something as big as that, but he had scaled before. You need to, if you're going to go really big, you need a visionary who isn't thinking about incrementing. They are thinking about winning, and that is massive. And you need nuts and bolts, like are we making progress against our vision, which is the execution
Day-to-day bit, yeah.
The KPIs and the monitoring
KPIs
of
and
what you're
metrics,
doing.
weekly business review, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And those are the three fundamentals of any business, I think, are like, get the strategy right. Have I got the strategy and do people know it? It's the bit, I draw it as a Venn diagram, and it's the bit between strategy and people where leaders need to be, which is, not only have I got the strategy, do my people know it? Do they get it? Can they recite it? Do they know what we're trying to do? Then you've got the bit between people and execution, which is, are my people capable of actually executing? And that's where competencies and other difficult things come in, like can they execute? And then you get the bit between strategy and execution. And that piece is, am I making progress on a daily basis towards achieving my
But let's just do that bit for a second. I mean, there's loads of people who've got great products, but they don't sell anything because nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
How did you catapult the sales so quick?
So if you have in travel, there is a frequency problem. So to put that in context, we hired a graduate out of Edinburgh University who had built the Edinburgh bus app and had more downloads than us. And this is later on, right? This is later on when we were quite
That
big.
must make it feel great.
And it was amazing. But it was the best way to bring to light the frequency issue, which is, it is very hard to get to product market fit unless you have high frequency. Because you learn off your customers, but if your customer only comes back every year, it's really hard to iterate.
Oh, that's what you mean by frequency, how often you touch the customer.
How often you're engaging with the customer, right?
Okay.
And if you look at hyper-growth companies, they tend to be high-frequency companies. You know, your Facebooks, ChatGPT. If you use it weekly, you grow quite fast. If you use it daily, you grow really fast. If you use it hourly, like you're a rocket ship. And it's the feedback loop, but it's also the referral. So if you look at the Edinburgh bus app, you know, we're chatting at the water cooler, the metaphorical water cooler. Suddenly I say, really sorry, got to go. And I run off. And tomorrow morning you say, what was that about? And I say, well, I got a GPS alert saying my bus is 4 minutes away. And immediately you go, I'm going to download that app because I have a need today. With Skyscanner, I say, hey, I saved loads of money on the flight yesterday. It was brilliant. You must try it. And you're like, I'll remember to download it next time I'm thinking about flying. If you're not a power user, if you're not a power flyer, the chances of you remembering are not that high.
Yeah, so the customers you were going after at that stage were what, the frequent flyers, the business travelers, or
at that stage we weren't. At that stage, what we were doing was effectively using free channels, so SEO, to drive traffic. And I can only say this retrospectively. I would like to pretend we were doing this consciously. It's now how I drive out multi-market. Is you go out in as many markets as you can, as lightweight as you can. And then you track your product market fit metrics, activation, like acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue, and you keep iterating and iterating and iterating, and eventually you get to a stage where you're retaining customers and you've got product market fit. And at that point, you can then put the afterburners on with paid channels, and then your paid channels get to a certain level where they cap out, and that's when you then drive into awareness, and you get an extra because of your click-through rate and trust improving with whether that's social, TV, whatever it might be. Everything then bumps up again. So again, at this point, I didn't know that when we'd first joined.
I was going to say, I mean, because very shortly afterwards, maybe 18 months after you join, and at that stage when you join, you're sort of not quite sure what the value of the business is, right? You then secure investment from Sequoia, who people will know is one of the greatest names in investment from the West Coast.
Yeah,
I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. How did that come about?
So there's a couple of key things in between. So one is equity was deep within our company.
What does that mean?
So beyond founders, 16% of the equity was in the company. Everybody could be a shareholder. So we could stand up on stage and say, you are all shareholders, or you all can be shareholders. Right. This is what's happening. So actually, before the Sequoia
and that was even when you went to like 1,800 people. You kept that philosophy all the way through.
Yeah.
And it's great for culture in the business.
Amazing.
I mean, it's fantastic for openness as well.
It's absolutely it's if you want to grow a £200 million business, fine, don't do it. If you want to grow $1 billion business and beyond, you almost have to. And it's amazing what it does in terms of ownership.
That's a huge lesson there for everybody.
It's massive. But the real value is people understanding what it's worth, because it's the most expensive currency you've got if the people you're giving to don't get it. So what we did, this is a proper, not many people know this, but actually not many people do know this apart from people who are there. But actually we realized a couple of things. One was people didn't understand the value of the equity. We were starting to build up some cash. We were at risk of perpetually diluting people from the pot and issuing new shares, because we knew we were scaling fast. We knew we were hiring more people. We knew we needed more senior talent to come in, because you can spend 15 years to get to a CMO, let's say, with a team of 20 and a market and a budget of 2 million. But 2 years later, suddenly you've got a team of 60. Now, if the logo changed and you moved company and you became, from CMO, you went to director of performance marketing, and my budget went from 2 million to 5 million, and my team went from 20 to 40, you'd be like, that's no problem. I understand why that title change has happened. When the logo doesn't change, people really struggle with it. But that is the reality of a scale-up. When you're rapidly scaling, you're expected to learn and transform yourself in an unnatural and an unfair period of time.
So was that one of the reasons why you raised money? Because people couldn't visualise what the value of their shares
What the business was
were?
worth.
No. So the bit I was going to tell you that we did was I actually did a buyback 6 months before the Sequoia deal. And I didn't know the Sequoia deal was going to happen.
At this point in the show, we wanted to just pause for a minute and tell you about our sponsor for this series of Billionaire Business. Nets International is a global systems integrator and solutions provider with over 40 years of worldwide expertise in telecom, digital and infrastructure solutions. Nets operates in 7 countries with 3,000 plus projects delivered across 26 nations worldwide. From fibre and mobile network rollouts to enterprise IT, cloud, cybersecurity, automation and managed solutions, Nets delivers smarter, faster and scalable solutions for its customers. With over 1,000 certified and skilled professionals and their own Nets Academy, Nets not only builds infrastructure but also offers managed services and flexible resource outsourcing to help businesses scale with confidence. Recognised as Cisco's Emerging Partner of the Year and Best Fibre Services Provider in the UK, Nets International is the trusted partner driving digital transformation and leading the charge in integrated solutions worldwide.
So there are two important data points here, or 2 important things to talk about. One is I was starting to engage with, and actually I'm very keen to say it's a we thing, but actually as a CFO, this is your job, right? So this is you have a perpetual pipeline of potential investors, whether you're fundraising or not. And it's like a conveyor belt. And as you get bigger, you add more on the top and some drop off the bottom because you've outreached them, you've outgrown them now. But your job is effectively like a CRM, is to manage potential people who would be right for your business.
And some of them need to get their money back within a certain period. They can't stay there forever.
And there's liquidity as well. And that's very much the case with staff. So when you've had equity out with staff for a long period of time, actually, 1, they don't understand the value of it. 2, some of them want to leave, but they're kind of zombied into your business and they've lost energy and they're therefore
I had some guys who'd forgotten that guys, you've got 250 shares. Have I? When did you give me that?
Yeah, totally. So we, about 6 months before the Sequoia deal happened, did a buyback. And it was
using the money that you had accumulated,
using cash we generated,
cash in the company.
And you know, taking the board on that journey was not straightforward. And I said, you know, SAP had been amazing supportive, and they got it. So I spent time with them saying, look, if we buy back here, we can then reissue because these are options or growth shares. And there's a gap in between. If we buy back at 10p and then we reissue at 15p, that 5p actually is going to you.
But did that not upset some of the employees? Because if you'd have bought my shares at, say, 10p and 2 weeks later they were worth 17, I'd go, he knew something I didn't know.
Yeah. This really worried me, and it didn't at all, which is amazing. So it really worried me. It was entirely optional, I should say. The buyback was entirely optional. And if you'd been there for a longer period of time, you could sell up to 75%, which I think was a kind of quiet way of saying, if you've been waiting to get off the bus, this is your moment to do it. And that was at a lower value. It was a decent valuation, but significantly lower than the Sequoia valuation. But you've got things like minority rights issues and all kinds of stuff that make it not worth the same thing as buying 20% of a business, right? You've got a fraction of a percent. So actually you would have a smaller valuation anyway. But I was really worried because then Sequoia came in.
And how did Sequoia come in? I mean, what were they around the business? Were you
It's
going
kind
off?
of everybody's dream to get Silicon Valley
Exactly.
money, and you did it.
So there are two things that I think are really important. One is the CRM of your investors. So I would every quarter print and send a flyer to my black book, my conveyor belt of people that I'd got in my CRM.
Whether they're investors or not.
Battery and Ventures,
Prospective
investors.
Yeah.
And it was like, we're not raising money. We don't intend on raising money. We didn't intend on raising money, to be honest. We don't intend on raising money. But just so you know, here's some highlights. And I would print it. I get it properly printed. It was like a folded A4, and I would send it because I didn't want them to be able to forward it on to anyone.
But physically? You printed
physically.
it?
With
Oh,
a
right,
handwritten
you posted
comp
it.
slip, 50 of them. It took me forever every quarter. It took me like a day and a half.
That's an interesting
About a
piece
day.
of advice, isn't it?
Sorry, you hand wrote the note.
You're an internet
I handwrote
marketing
a comps
company.
note, and I printed a flyer that went in that had a
So you hand wrote
headline.
the com note. Yeah,
Comps notes, but I had to about 50. I mean, I would sort of go back, do another 10, go and
So
do
you
other
got
stuff.
a very nice fountain pen.
With a no, definitely not that point. It was definitely a Bic. But the other thing it does is it keeps you front of mind. You can't throw it out because you know a quarter later you're going to get another set of stats, and you want to be able to compare the journey as a potential investor.
I mean, to be fair, you can only do that if your results are getting better and better and better.
For sure, yes,
Yeah.
yes, but you have to assume they're going to get better and better and better, otherwise.
Yeah.
So it started to do this.
So how long from your first note to Sequoia then, to them coming in?
Sequoia never got a note. This is what's quite amusing about it is.
Oh, right.
When you do this, people move from VC to VC. And it just happened
right,
that
okay.
Sequoia had been investors in Kayak. Kayak had IPO'd. And Sequoia, and this is the second lesson I would say to people. So one is manage your CFO to manage the CRM of this. Like, it's part of their job description, and they should be owning it and doing it and executing. Because again, with the strategy, people, execution, that goes down to functions. You can use those three things anywhere. You have a financial strategy, right? You have to have a balance sheet strategy. How do I use my balance sheet to grow faster? That is the role of a CFO, whether that's cap table, whether that's debt, whatever it might be, and you've got to drive it. So you've got these things they're trying to do. The second thing is to understand that investors tend to be power curve investors.
What does that mean?
And so what it means is when a lot of research has shown that even with listed stocks, most stocks don't really drive a return. What drives the whole index lifting is the top 10 or 15%. And they lift everything else with them. So if you understand that, you have to position yourself as the power curve, the likely winner. And this is where I think we really struggle, because we're there's two issues in the UK. One is we're quite humble, actually. We struggle to talk about winning. We don't want to be the best, or we're embarrassed to say it. And the second thing is, there is enough culture.
We sell early. We sell too early.
There's
That's always the way.
I work
isn't
with a
it?
lot of founders, and they're like, I don't need any more, so why would I? Whereas I think there are other nations where it's never enough. It's very much your raison d'etre is to keep building and keep getting more, and that's their culture. So I think we're always against those couple of things, but if we face into that, then great. So I think if you were looking at the rise of travel and you'd just come out of Kayak and you were saying, disintermediation is coming in this space, somebody is going to win, it's a marketplace play, who's it going to be, and scour the market. And that coupled with somebody's just moved to our firm who happens to get a flyer from before, and everyone has been tracking this company for some time,
Right.
led to the most extraordinary thing, which was, we don't need money. And then at one point I went to Gareth and Mark. I was like, just so you know, Mike Moritz has just got in touch. And I'm sort of wondering if we probably ought to have that chat.
Who is a famous investment professional. I
Yeah,
mean, he's a legend, right? And when they invested, what was it like having, a preeminent West Coast venture capital investor on the board? I mean, what difference did it make?
I would say there's three fundamental differences. So the first one, which is pretty straightforward, is your ability to recruit goes through the roof. you can pull in talent, you can pull in US talent, because we had
You're different.
500 or 600 software engineers. Who has managed that many engineers growing at that pace in B2C in the UK? Not many.
Yeah.
Right. So actually, you have to bring talent in, and the minute and there's two things. One is their brand, and second thing is these guys are value add teams who actually can do a whole load of back channel research and all the rest of it. So you've got that piece when they come in. I think the second bit that is really interesting actually predominantly happened before they came in, which was, we don't need money, but clearly for some reason the companies you touch tend to succeed. Why is that? And it's because of all three of these things, I'd say. And I'm sure they would say there's more, and they'll be very cross with me for not thinking of the other ones. But the things that stand out to me that I remember were, we said to them, we don't need your money, keen to understand. They said, why don't you come and see us? So 4 of us got on a plane, went over, and we saw, I think it was 21 businesses in 3 days.
That they'd invested in.
Most they'd invested,
Right.
some they hadn't. So Facebook they didn't, but we went to see Facebook. Right. We went to go and see LinkedIn. LinkedIn was transformative for us. We went to see Square. We went to see a whole raft of businesses, and they had a guy from Sequoia. We'd hop in the bus, like in a minivan, and we'd go next meeting. And because of the cognitive load of it, we'd take it in terms of who ran point.
Oh, so Sequoia went with you to all these people?
Yes. Not Mike for all of them. He came for some.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget going around Airbnb with him, which at that point had like literally exploded with growth, and there were people everywhere, and he was sort of stepping over bodies and stuff, and looked like quite unsure about how things were going there. But for us to see this was amazing, and for us to speak to CTOs about what was coming from an agile point of view, what was coming in terms of tribes and squads, multidisciplinary teams, OKRs, it was a phenomenal entry into that ecosystem, and all of them, because this is what they do over there, said, if you have any problems or you want me to chat to your CTO, just give me a shout and connect us.
And that is the thing about working with someone like that, and it's the issue we have in the UK. The comparisons you can make across scale businesses in the US is just phenomenal. But let's just move on. I mean,
Can I give you the third thing? Because other people will be like, you never gave the third thing. What was it? And the third thing was, SEP, as I say, were mega supportive, were great. But they invest in a kind of British way, right? Which is be prudent, think twice, be careful, be diligent. And that for me as a CFO kind of makes complete sense. And the sort of Sequoia, Mike Moritz way was just do it already, right? And so actually it was really nice that we could kind of position ourselves between the two of them. So I remember we were buying a company in China, which was for a bunch of reasons much more complicated than you'd think it would be. And it's quite hard to get under the skin of what the real numbers are when you buy a business in China. Not for any sort of suspicious reason, but it's the way they report is kind of all over the place. So trying to get under the skin of that, and you'd have, one side would be, make sure we get to the bottom of this because we don't want to buy a pup. And you have the other side, which is like, are we seriously still talking about this? Like, just do it. And you'd end up somewhere in the middle. So for me, it was lovely to have, I could lean more towards one or I could lean more towards the other, depending actually how I felt. But it was,
so let's
do
do
really
that
nice.
international bit, because clearly you went out to China, Madrid, Miami. You went to Miami, I think, from memory.
I moved to Miami, yes, yeah.
How did you find trying to replicate it around the world? Was it just drop in and play, or was it a nightmare? Or because most people struggle with that kind of thing.
They do, and I think actually the people who struggle the most with it are Americans, and it's because it's not part of their DNA to localize rapidly, because you can get so big
in America. Yeah.
And that's a real advantage in Europe, is you have to get out of your own market very quickly or you're going to cap out. And so we moved, and this was another massive call, I would say, of Gareth's, was everyone was saying, right, you need to go and win in the US. And the kind of contrarian was like, no, it's all about Asia. Our second office is going to be Singapore. So we opened and we went after Asia. And what if you can, the art of multi-market scaling is to go as light touch and cheap as you can across as many markets as you can, and effectively incubate them looking at your product market fit metrics until you hit product market fit. And then you ramp up. So we would go, so that's the first thing, is to think about growing very. So you go.
So it's
you
a
wanna
test
go,
and learn philosophy.
yeah, but go 15 markets, go 20 markets,
All at once.
all at once, because you think
Whoa.
your
Which is
desktop.
counterintuitive, isn't it? Because
Totally.
most people will say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to nail Germany because
Yeah.
it's the biggest country in Europe.
Completely.
And then they screw up.
And you do a desktop analysis, and then you go in and you try and force it. And the reality is, the product market fit, other than frequency, which means you can get product market fit faster, it broadly takes 3 times longer than you thought and costs twice as much, or it takes twice as long and costs 3 times as much. And that's about the only lever you've got to pull, right? So some of these markets took 5 or 6 years to get to product market fit. Some people just have to see your brand around and not going out of business to eventually push the button. So, and with low frequency, that can be a long time before they're searching for cheap flights.
But did you find that very different around the world? I mean, when you're in Miami, was that very different to when you were in Singapore?
Massively, yeah. Yeah. And product market fit, everything from the way you pay in Brazil, and I'm not just talking about cards, I'm literally talking about stage payments versus the way you'll pay through WeChat in China, for instance. So you've got core product. So you have like a level 0, which is I've got a domain out, I've got a translator, and this stuff is now easy to do with AI. Translating at the blink of an eye, headless CMS, you can now roll out 15 markets in a year, no problem. And then what you do is but the trick is the execution piece. The strategy is actually fairly straightforward. The execution is making sure you're tracking them and then tweaking them, and then the org design around about it and making sure you've got the right people to enable them to work through. So
I'll give you a daft example to illustrate the point. One of my favourites was I had a friend who was CFO for an African airline, and I said to him, "What's the biggest difference?" He said, "They're paying cash at the airport."
Yes, yeah.
I mean, fundamentally different.
Yes.
Right? Did you, not to that extreme, but did you find that kind of cultural differences around the world?
Huge. So like Thailand was similar. There are other markets in Asia that was really hard to sell tickets because they just didn't have cards, right? When you've got 2% banking penetration into a market, it's really hard.
Really tough.
Yeah, you can do as much desktop analysis as you like about, wow, this market's huge and the GDP is growing and their propensity to fly is great.
So what do you do when you hit that? You've got a great idea, but nobody's got banking cards or credit cards. Or what happened then?
You go into the other 15 markets. You leave
I
it
see
there.
what you mean.
So
That's part of your test and learn. It's not the right place.
And you accept what it is. It is what it is, and you be at peace with product market fit, taking what it takes. So that's why you have to go as many. And the way I explain it to businesses now, I'm like, it's you want to put like 15 flies in the water and keep tweaking them, and then as soon as a fish takes, that's the one you focus on, and then you scale it and build it. Whereas I think what people do is they're like, I think the fish is over there, so I'm going to cast one fly, and hopefully that's where the fish is. And it's a very different model. And I should say, I guess, because we haven't said this, but so I was 4 years as CFO, did the Sequoia transaction, great, and then did £200 million at £1 billion, which was the biggest private tech raise at that point in time. 5 new international investors came in. And actually, then I moved to Miami to run.
Sorry, can we just pause that in
growth.
case any of the audience missed that? That was the biggest single fundraise by a UK private company, ever at that point.
Yeah, a tech company, yes.
A tech company, yeah.
And then
Until, go on then, who beat you next?
I had the badge for about a month and then delivery took it.
and then take us through the exit. So was that was $1.75 billion, 2017?
2016.
2016. And I mean, was that planned? Did you run a process, or did you just, someone knocked on the door and said, it's a Chinese company, right? They said, I've just got to own the business.
Yeah, so it was tail end 2016. It was a process. It was run by, so at this point I'd moved to run the Americas out of Miami. And Colin McClellan, who'd frankly propped me up as CFO for the last 3 years anyway, as my director of finance, had then became CFO.
Yeah.
I wanted to move into growth, which I was you can probably tell the way I speak about it. Like, I'm absolutely obsessed by multi-market and product and execution and numbers. He moved in, and then he and Caroline Jameson, who was chief legal officer, ran that process. So there's certainly no credit to me on that. But we used Catalyst
Shane,
advisors.
I'm conscious that we have to say thank you because you're coming on your way to the airport and you're about to get on an airplane, right? So we've time for one last question. Are you still obsessed with creating more billion-pound businesses?
I am entirely obsessed with it. Yeah. I had a bunch of time out afterwards. There is,
She sounds like you deserved.
yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully I did. I was really lucky.
What did you do with it, by the way?
I effectively wrote an enormous midlife crisis and then started ticking them off. One of those was to improve my golf handicap, and I realised that it was either do that or do the rest of the list. And it was like, and which when you really get kind of, and this kind of sums me up, when you really kind of get down to the number, it's like change a number or do all this other stuff. So I decided to do all the other stuff, and I'm still a pretty dreadful golfer. But I got pulled back into business slowly when I was ready to fall back in love with it. And now I could look back at what we'd done, and now I can see it because I sit across 4 boards. I coach about 8 scale-up founders as well, and I do some government stuff. And it's all because I kind of came back with a purpose, which was to help scale up people, companies and countries be the best they can be. It's quite a focus on trying to help the Scottish economy.
What I quite like with this conversation is you may not have actually understood why you were doing what you did at the time, but you spent a long time rationalising it, and that's why you're a great coach now, I think, because you can explain how you did it. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know you'll keep talking. We'd love to talk to you forever, but you've got an aeroplane to catch.
Dude,
Shane,
thanks for having me.
We could chat for ages. Shane, thanks very much.
No, I really appreciate having me on. Thanks, guys. Really
Thank
appreciate
you. Ian, Shane's quite a character, isn't he? I mean, you don't often find a numbers guy, finance director, who's also a technologist, right?
No, I mean, right at the start when we were introducing him, I was about to introduce him as a CFO and then thought, how can you? This guy's done everything. And he's absolutely infectious, isn't he?
He is. I like the story, though, around the team, because there were 3 people who all sort of fired off against each other.
I think that was one of the key lessons out of this one, and it's one that's not just for Skyscanner, it's for all businesses, where he said, you need one, a visionary, you need one who's done a scale up before, don't try and reinvent the wheel, and then thirdly, you need an operations guy who just gets things done, and I think that's a great combination.
And it worked, didn't it? I mean, not many businesses, very, very few UK internet businesses have ever gone from 0 to, what was it, $1.75 billion in 10 or 11 years?
No, remarkable, wasn't it? But then again, when he was expanding internationally, 15 countries at once. I nearly fell off my chair when he said that.
Yeah, that's completely counterintuitive for me. I mean, normally you try and nail Germany or America and you either succeed or most times you fail.
I get you have to be a software type business, like you can translate websites, but their attitude to pulling out of countries was brutal. That story about Thailand where they found only 1 in 50 people had a bank card, so there was pointless having an online shop. Bang. Didn't try and fix it, just moved on to the next country. It was an incredible attitude.
Do you think their timing was just a little bit lucky, though? They were one of the first. They obviously had a great product.
You can argue that, but you can't be lucky over 11 years.
Good point.
You can be lucky over 11 months, I think.
And the bit that I guess was something that made me think was around frequency. He talked
the story about the graduate.
Yeah.
I mean, how self-deprecating for a guy to tell a story that a graduate from the local uni had developed the Edinburgh bus app and he'd had more downloads than they had. Unbelievable. But that concept of frequency, how often do you touch the customer? That's a really interesting point, isn't it, when you try and build a relationship?
Well, it's a hard nut to crack in the airlines business, isn't it? Because the reality is most people, you've got these business travellers, but most people take a flight once or twice a year, right? So how do you engage with them as customers?
Amazing. I mean, he's off trying to do it again.
I know.
I mean, would you bet against him succeeding?
I would not bet against Shane.
No, me neither.